Hey everyone, I'm John, one half of the Board Gaming Duo over on Instagram, and this week we're taking a look at a game that gives you the full World War II experience in just 20 minutes. So let's hop over to the table and set up for a game of Blitzkrieg. All right, let's get set up for a game of Blitzkrieg. So we've got the main board set out here in the center of the table. We'll be using the regular Allied versus Axis board for this video. There's another side that's used for the expansion that's included with the game, but we'll not be covering that in this video. So the player board split up into 5 different theaters: Western Europe, Pacific Ocean, Southeast Asia, Africa and the Middle East, as well as Eastern Europe. And then within each theater, there's a few other areas to keep in mind. So we've got a battle track with a battle track marker. You've got campaigns, and you've got battle spaces. So the campaigns would be the rows going across. The battle spaces would be each individual section of that campaign. Each player also has a bag that they're going to place all of their player tokens in, and these are going to determine your actions for the game. So we'll drop these in here, give them a little shake, and then each player draws 3 to place behind their player screen out of view of the other person. We do have the other player's components right over here. These would be the Allied player tokens. This is the Axis player tokens. We've also got some research tokens here that'll be used throughout the game that we'll reference later on in the explanation of the video. But this is what your setup is going to look like as you get into playing a game of Blitzkrieg. Player turns in Blitzkrieg are pretty straightforward in terms of what you're going to do. You're going to be taking tokens from your reserve, which are the tokens that are behind your player board. You're going to pick one of the theaters, and you're going to place your tokens into one of the active campaigns. And an active campaign is the topmost row of each theater that has empty spaces available in it. So starting the game, they're always going to be in one of these top 5 rows. Each campaign has different battle spaces in it, and those battle spaces are all different colors. That just determines which types of units you can place on those spaces. And this is all outlined on your player aid as well, down here at the bottom. It'll show you which tokens can go where. The blue space can have Navy or Air Force tokens. The brown spaces can have Army or Air Force tokens. And then the ones that are split between blue and brown, those can have any of the units played on them. The symbols that are on your tokens are going to determine what type of unit it is. So anything with a tank is going to be an Army. Anything with a ship on it is going to be the Navy, and anything with a plane on it is going to be the Air Force. When you place a token in one of the campaigns on one of the battle spaces, you're just going to activate whatever ability is on that space. The turns in Blitzkrieg are pretty straightforward. Each player is going to choose one of the unit tokens from their reserve, meaning behind the screen. You're going to place it in one of the campaign spaces, and then you're just going to trigger what that space does. So I could, for example, take this 3 tank. Tanks can be played on the land or the land and sea spaces. So if I were to place this tank here, this +1 means I get to move 1 additional space on top of the 3 spaces I move for placing the tank there. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would be the end of my turn. I would draw up 1 more token to add to my reserve. And now the person playing the Allied would go next. So now that the Axis players completed their turn, they drew their extra tile, the Allied player gets their turn, so they can choose to go to a different theater on the board and start a new campaign, or they can continue playing on the campaign that the Axis player is in. So for example, they could play this level 2 plane on this same campaign. So they would be able to move this track back 2 spaces, and they've covered up the industrial production space, which means they get to draw a tile from their bag and add it to their reserve. With this campaign being completed, we would check to see who's farthest ahead on the track for Eastern Europe, and they're going to get to add 2 points to their war victory track. So in this case, it's the Axis player. So they're going to get 2 points.
Let's take a look at some of the other symbols that you'll see as you play a game of Blitzkrieg. This is the bombing symbol, which allows you to discard 1 random unit from your opponent's reserve, placing it back into their bag. This is the research symbol, which lets you draw 1 random unit token from the research pile and add it to your bag. The tactical advantage symbol lets you move that number of spaces on the battle track where you've just placed your unit. The strategic advantage symbol lets you move that number of spaces on a different theater. The propaganda symbol lets you advance that number of spaces on the war victory track. The improved industrial production lets you draw multiple tokens from your bag and add them to your reserve. And the improved research symbol lets you draw 2 random unit tokens from the research pile and add them to your bag. The yellow special weapon tokens are mostly upgraded versions of tokens you already have, however there are a few new symbols. The task force forces you to ignore the effect of the space where you placed it. The nuclear bomb allows you to move up 7 spaces wherever you placed it, however you have to move back 2 spaces in all other theaters. The spy will copy the value, type, and special ability of the token that was placed by your opponent most recently. The scientist can be placed on any battle space, however since it has no military value, you don't get to move the battle marker at all.
All right, so after a couple more rounds, this is kind of the state of the board. We've got some campaigns that are happening in Western Europe, and the Axis player has just closed the theater of Eastern Europe by placing their last tank here, which moved the war track all the way over to this end space here. So what happens in this instance is any spaces that are still visible, you would trigger. So this is the bombing space. So the Allied player would have to get rid of one of their reserve tokens at random. The Axis player is going to gain 2 points. 2. They're also going to get the 6 points for closing this theater, even though those spaces were empty. So we'll go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then these little yellow highlighted spaces are points you're going to gain if you've won the theater. You'll gain those points as well. So this player is going to get those additional points. That's essentially how the game is going to be played until one of the victory conditions is met. So either a player is going to get to 25 points or more on the war victory track up here. If the Axis player reaches that first, the Allied player will get one more turn to see if they can get past them on the track. If the Allied player reaches 25 points first, they immediately win. There is no extra turn for the Axis player. If both players are tied at 25 or more points, the Allied player will automatically win. And then there's one more way that the game can end. If at any point at the start of a player's turn they don't have any tokens to place or they can't place any reserve unit tokens, their opponent would be immediately declared the winner. So if it got to my turn as the Axis and I had no tokens here, the Allied player would be the winner. Thanks for hanging out during this video. I hope you enjoyed watching and learning how to play Blitzkrieg. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified of any future videos that come out. You can also check us out over on Instagram, where every week we talk about a 2-player game that we've been enjoying playing lately on a series we're calling 2-Player Tuesday. Until next time, happy gaming!